less healthy, more vulnerable to physical violence and sexual abuse. They are less literate. Majority of world's unhealthy, unfed, and unpaid happen to the woman. One glaring crisis from this pandemic has been about increasing domestic violence against women. Gender-based violence should be declared as pandemic. The virus of the violence has to be addressed before it assumes proportion of a pandemic. Different interventions need to be there. We must work to urgently address this challenge as we look to post-pandemic world. Maternal health is a matter of great concern. This calls on governments to increase investments to provide for human security, to make them agents of changes by freeing them from cycles of discrimination and exploitation. Though there is quest for equal rights and full participation for women, remain as the unfinished business. Creating opportunity for women is not only a moral issue, it is vital for economy and security to build this security and institutionalize hard-earned gains. So in Nepal, I'll tell you a little bit about Nepal. To prevent the spread of coronavirus, Nepal was under a nationwide full lockdown from March 24. Before lockdown, we had near about 3 months time to take the precaution, but the government's response to the pandemic has been debilitating due to lack of proactive measures of government and insufficient resources. The situation became more complicated. Gender violence was already growing problem in Nepal prior to COVID-19. A report suggests that 48% of women in Nepal had experienced violence at some point in their lives, with 27% of them experiencing physical violence. In addition, 61% of them had never told anyone about the abuse, and it is going to rise during Nepal's lockdown period. Recently, a woman who was staying at quarantine was allegedly gang raped, and other child harassment cases were also reported. Human trafficking is another major issue to be addressed. So governments, regulating bodies must monitor sharply. And I would like to request all for working together. We will overcome these challenges. Nothing will be difficult to address when the human spirit wills it. Therefore, let's fight together and grow together. Thank you so much. I would like to listen to you more than say my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Sujata Koirala, for your welcome remarks. Next, I'd love to invite Kusum Kaul Vyas from India. And before that, I would like to acknowledge Dibya Chaturvedi. She also joined us from Sahelis. She's a co-executive director based in Boston, and Priya Saman and Dibya Chandra. So I welcome them in this forum. Please go ahead, Kusum Kaul Vyas.
During COVID, the domestic violence in India has risen manifold. There have been different data coming from different places, different districts and different states, because it has increased, we know that, but the calls to the call centers and the police stations, they are giving a different data. because maybe some women did not have access to phones. They may not have been able to go out of their homes to make the calls. But some have been able to make the calls to the police stations and the help centers. But no help came to them because the help centers, NGOs, the offices were closed and the police was busy taking care of other things in the country due to the COVID situation in the nation. So many people, many thinkers thought that Indian government had put emergency food, availability of food and medicine on emergencies. They should have put the domestic violence also at the same level so that women can call up at certain numbers. Later on, a case went in Jammu and Kashmir, the case went to the High Court. And the High Court gave the directives that women should be allowed to make the phone calls. If they cannot do from home, they should be allowed to make phone calls from the places where they purchase food or they purchase medicines, so that the perpetrators don't come to know about it. That was, government made an arrangement through the High Court for the women in one state, but that it was not the same situation in other states. As we know, India, where 75% of our population, they stay in 1 or 2 rooms. And the strength of our families are 5 people. It can be 5 to 7 also, but minimum is 5. Overpopulated country. India is an overpopulated country and people are staying in 1 or 2 rooms. So during COVID, the situation became more difficult. There was no physical space for people. They could not go out. So they had too many people staying indoors. So domestic violence increased because of that, lack of physical space. Another reason was, I'm talking about the people who did not have access to food or income. So that was a major reason for one of the major reasons for domestic violence. Besides the lack of space, as people could not go out. And women who have been earning, they go out daily and earn whatever they earn, even if it is 100 rupees per day. So that also they could not do. So it became an additional burden on the family of not having enough resources. Then in our society, men are in a section, especially lower class, men are prone to drinking, which they could not get access to the bottle, which they are used to daily. So they diverted their frustrations towards the women in the family, especially the wives. So it became more and more difficult for such unprivileged women to take care of themselves. They could neither call up someone and there have been certain instances where women called police stations, but police was not free to cater to the situation. So women were left at their own mercy in India during COVID. And it has led to a drastic situation in the society. Shall I continue?
Thank you, Kusum Beyazji. So we'll come back in the question and Q&A session with some, of our viewers. We are on Facebook Live now. If our viewers have some questions, we'll come back in the Q&A session. So next,
Okay.
okay, next we have just got in here Lily Thapa from Nepal. She's the founder president of Women for Human Rights in Nepal. And then we have Mahbuba Akhtar Kabita, founder and president of Batigor. And she will be focusing on the issues that we are facing in Bangladesh. Please go ahead, Mahbuba Akhtar Kabita. Unmute, please. Unmute.
All right.
Yes,
Can you
now
hear me?
it's good. Yes.
Okay. So,
Go ahead.
hi, this is Mahbuba Kabita. I'm the founder and the president of a nonprofit organization, Batigor. And good morning from Newark. I'm in Newark. So let me start the talk about, so should I focus only on Bangladesh or the domestic
Bangladesh
violence?
and your experiences,
Okay.
only focus on domestic violence today.
That's correct. But in US as well, or only
Yes,
Bangladesh?
yes, whatever you experience, you have a 5 minutes time.
Okay, thank you. So if we start talking about domestic violence, and we know all the definition, that's the violence or aggressive behavior within the home, typically involving the violent or abuse of a spouse with a partner. So in US, the lockdown, it's in one hand, it proved effective measures for battling the pandemic, but they have also exposed gender inequalities and the threats to women across the world, not only US, all over the world. So if we think about the woman in the family, they are suffering as they suffered in Asian country, like in Bangladesh. Here, the women are in Newark with the low income group. They are living like India, what the other participants shared it right now, that in a 1-bedroom apartment, they are living 2, sometimes 3 families together. And now, because of this COVID-19 situation, men cannot go out. So both women and children all are on the same situation. They are being abused by their partner or the male family member. They are not having any chance to talk or getting support from other agencies to share their sufferings or their pains. So that's a big concern for women. They cannot, their workload is increased tremendously because all the family members and the children are at home and they do not share their domestic household chores. So the women, like before, they were going out, they had some ventures to share, at least to breathe outside. Because of this COVID-19, they cannot, they do not have their chances. And their partners are always with them, just surrounded by them. So they cannot talk about their situation. So in Bangladesh, if I go back to Bangladesh, maybe you all know about a killing took place. A man killed his wife, and then he surrendered to the police station, and it was viral in Facebook. So I'm not going to detail of that, but I'm just want to mention that this is the consequences of this COVID-19 lockdown impact. This lockdown in Bangladesh, the domestic violence and abuses are increased in the numbers and in the way they were acting before. It was happening before. If I give you a kind of numbers that very recently, there was a survey among 17,000 women in April on this year after a lockdown started. It revealed that 800. Hello. Hello.
Yeah, go ahead. We are
Okay.
listening. Go ahead.
Okay, so I thought, okay. So
Yeah,
it
even
says
2 more
that,
minutes left.
okay, so it started with 17,000 women in April, and it from 17,848 women were tortured physically. 2,008 women was suffered or tortured mentally, 85 sexually, 1,308 people faced financial restriction from their husbands. 4 women were raped, 1 killed, 20 were sexually assaulted. And it's not only with the women, also for the girls and the children. 16 or 92% children have been abused by their parents or other family members during this period of COVID-19 lockdown situation. 14 were raped, 16 faced attempt to rape, 2 were kidnapped, 10 were sexually abused. So the situation is getting down, and the women, they are suffering from all aspects of their family life. And the thing is, they do not have any venture to share their feelings with anybody, to go to get support from the other agencies also. Do I have time to continue, or?
We will come back in the QA session. If
Okay.
our viewers, we are on Facebook Live. If our
Okay.
viewers have some questions, we'll come back in QA session. Thank you for your presentation, Mahbooba Akhtar Kavita.
Thank
So
you.
we'll get back to you. Thank you. Next, I'd like to invite Tenzin Seyang, focusing on Tibetan community about the domestic violence during and post-COVID-19. I welcome Tenzin Seyang.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Somnath and Karela ji, for organizing this very important discussion. I would like to focus more on the pandemic for the immigrant and transnational families living in the United States. So the first response to the pandemic, I understand that the urgency, but it somehow failed to see some major existing or prevailing social inequalities, be it gender, be it race, be it the income disparity. Because of that, we missed the equity approach towards responding to the COVID-19. That's why all of a sudden we see a high death rate in Black and brown communities, as well as we saw a spike in domestic violence cases. And we already know that isolation is a form of domestic violence that women and many individuals face. So what happens is when you say stay home, stay safe, and your home is not safe. So I don't know how a survivor would get that message. It is very painful for sure. And I myself have experienced isolation in a relationship much ahead of time when I was young. So I know what isolation is like. And now when you encourage lockdown, social distancing, and quarantine measures, it contributes to further isolation. And then being an immigrant, you are more vulnerable, being an immigrant woman. So we see, we heard about Bangladesh, we had heard about Nepal, India. So in New York, especially, we have huge number of immigrant families. They also live in one home with because of the rent is too high. They share, 5 and 6 family members live together in one house. And then we fail to see that many immigrant women, they face legal document problems. Many of us do not have social security number, and the vulnerability that which Corella spoke about is already really high in the immigrant families in New York. The government has provisions of stimulus check, unemployment insurance, but if you haven't been working because of childcare, or you do not have legal documents, how will you receive that provisions of economic support assistance by the government? And when you don't have it, and the pandemic has been more than 3 months, right? So how would you pay your rent? And you have no choice but to live with your abuser in the same house. It has impact not only on the individual, but the children, and also immigrant women or immigrant families lack support more than people in their own homeland, because they leave their parents back home. They come here all alone, finding for a better future, but then they find themselves all alone, struggling, working in low income jobs, and working under domestic employers, working under the Americans who employ them in their homes, doing as babysitters, house workers. So the likelihood of the violence as well as the vulnerability is much higher in immigrant and transnational family members, and we should be able to see it. Now, let me talk more about what did we learn from this COVID-19, the lessons learned, and how do we move forward, right? So the first one is we really need a rapid responses to the COVID-19, but we also need, what we realize is emergency funding, especially for most vulnerable communities or most vulnerable members of the country, and building a community, within invisible community members. We're also talking about Census 2020 in the United States, and we're talking about the hard to count population. So hard to count population, we were not able to reach them with funding, and they are the most vulnerable, and we should be able to channel the funding so that it trickles down to the most needy, most vulnerable in the country. And another, so the way forward can be, and also, it can be immediate, intermediate, and a long-term solution to crisis. So I would also like to say that, many of the immigrants do not speak English language. So here in New York, we speak more than 100 languages, or to nearly 600 languages that we say, right? So we should be able to come out with informational resources in all these languages to be able to effectively eradicate or end domestic violence. Each individual deserves to live in dignity, deserves equality, and deserves respect. So keeping that in mind, we must provide resources in all the languages, hotlines in all the languages, and diversify your team. In the nonprofits, in the human rights advocate workers, you should diversify that. You should have as many ethnic background people in your team, so that you are able to cater to as many people, reach out to the most vulnerable in the country. And also, I think what we missed here for the pandemic response is a gender-sensitive approach to the response, right? So we should be able to, the long-term solution should be, we should include gender-sensitive leadership, members in the leadership, and so that they design policies and guidelines taking into consideration all the social inequalities, be it gender inequalities or income disparity or racial inequalities. So we really need sensitive leadership in the country. And another program that I really saw is working out is rather than just focusing on the survivors, we also should be focusing on the perpetrators. How about training the perpetrators? How about changing the mindset of the perpetrators and what is causing them to inflict violence upon another individual? And also movement like Me Too had been really successful. And if we have a movement like Me Too, similar movement that shames a violence perpetrator, or that shames that controlling another individual is reflecting your insecurity, or maybe it's a weakness. And we like the long-term solution is when every child and every young adult in the country should be shaming that violence behaviors. If we have something like that movement, I think we will be able to end domestic violence someday, sometime. And on another note, I want to reiterate that we need to promote respectful and nonviolent relationships. And we need to be able to include the most invisible community members in the policies as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Tenzin Xiang, for your valuable suggestions, sharing your knowledge and experiences, and giving some tips to make these domestic violence solutions better in the days to come. Me Too and We Too. I believe Me Too and We Too can solve these issues sooner and in a better way. And I would like to impact on that. The motto of this forum today is be fear, no fear. So let's be fear and let's do not fear when it comes to the domestic violence. Thank you again. And next, I'd love to go to Uganda. And please welcome Mrs. Birabwa Subuga Christine. Please share your thoughts and experiences and knowledge that you are from. We got to know some from your country, Uganda, related to domestic violence.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gimiri. Just in case you may not know, Uganda is in the eastern part of Africa. A lot of the things that have been shared by my colleagues here, I associate with in terms of what COVID has done. I would like to say that domestic violence is not new. Things have just worsened as a result of closing of spaces, as a result of the effects of COVID. In Uganda, we have a domestic violence, an Anti-Domestic Violence Act 2014, which tries to address issues of domestic violence and also gender-based violence. So it isn't as if we're talking about a new problem, but I like the suggestion by Madame Sujata that we should declare domestic violence a pandemic, because in Uganda, between March and now, 6 women have died as a result of domestic violence. And yet at the same time, we have 800 cases of COVID, of which about 200 have recovered so far and none has died. If we are all hiding in our homes because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and yet it's not killing us in Uganda, but domestic violence is, you can see the real challenge that we are facing. And when we think about women in the COVID times, they are doing all that domestic work in Uganda, in Africa generally. I could possibly speak for Africa. Men, they don't work, they don't do domestic work. That's for women and the children. So they're doing all that domestic work. They're doing the homeschooling because the children are at home. The children are hungry. They are looking after their husbands because one woman got beat up because she didn't iron her husband's shirt on time. Okay, she should have ironed it the night before. He woke up in the morning, never mind that he wasn't going anywhere, but he woke up in the morning, his shirt wasn't ironed, and he beat her up. You know, why would she take that long? But you know, she has all these things to do, and it doesn't matter. She's a beast of burdens. So the abuse comes in, you know, amidst all of those things that the woman is going through. You know, we have to think about that. Between March 30th and April 28th of 2020, 3,280 cases of domestic violence against women were reported. Ideally, in a month, we would have between 30 to 50. Now we're talking in 1 month, 3,280. And we also had 283 cases of violence against children in the same month. And so we're talking about a problem that is a big one. We're talking about a problem that dehumanizes the woman and the child. We're talking about a serious problem. At the same time, it's taboo to share, you know, things within your home. We have many sayings in our different languages, you know, where you don't go telling the public about what is happening in your home. So you get beat on, but you can't talk about it. So the 3,280 cases could potentially be less than a half of what is happening in our communities today. And also someone warned, you know, someone from government warned recently, stop asking husbands to provide food. They're not working, they're at home. So what should the woman do? When she asks, she gets beat on, but the children are hungry, they need to eat. And so lots of challenges in there. What has been done? What has happened? What's going on in Uganda to deal with these issues? Government has used the media to bring out Ugandan celebrities to deal with the fear of victims, therefore encourage them to report, but also to call on the fairness of the key players, especially the state itself, okay? To be able to say, what are you doing for this taxpayer that is suffering as a result of the pandemic? We have also a lot of donors that have come in to provide funds for some kind of shelters, which are also difficult because of social distancing. You can't have enough, really. And also toll-free lines, and also some kind of counseling support for survivors. We also have the judiciary in Uganda planning to start holding special sessions, like hearings, in relation to domestic violence, stroke, gender-based violence. So that's what is going on right now. And also what we think is that there is need to prioritize domestic violence cases, to fast track them. And so we're happy about the fact that the judiciary is doing something about making the fast tracking those cases so they don't wait in line, because they are a matter of life and death. We also, there's need for government to provide more shelters because of social distancing and all. You know, the 1 or 2 shelters by NGOs or civil society organizations are not enough. They cannot do, as well as food. Some of the reasons, obviously, that cause domestic violence are issues of gender inequality. I think we've talked about them. Some people have. Issues, Uganda, like many, I'm sure, of the other countries and in Africa generally, is a patriarchal society. The men are in charge. They do whatever they want. Women are part of the property they own, so they can beat them to discipline them. And, you know, believe it or not, even today, 2020, that is the way things are viewed in our society. And of course, poverty. If a man has been laid off, you know, and then the woman comes to say, I need dinner for the children, the quickest and easiest way to deal with it is to beat on her, because, you know, the man is already in problems and he doesn't want to feel that he's not fending. And since society allows it, give her a few slaps or, you know, choke her up so that she doesn't bother you. Then she'll look elsewhere for the food. So these are some of the challenges we are experiencing, and we're hoping that with the measures that are in place, we will do better. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Biravwa, for sharing your experiences and knowledge about Uganda regarding domestic violence. And like we said, be fear, no fear. We have to work together to make it better in the days to come. Thank you. Thank you again. Next, I'd love to invite Ms. Teresa Nestle from Brazil.
Yes, good morning. I'm from Rio, Brazil, and I'm work at United Nations as a UN volunteer for more than 15 years. And everything I'm hearing today is the same speeches that I heard inside the UN. And as a volunteer, I could follow, especially the women issues, because it's my problem. I follow the women's issues rights. And to tell you the truth, all the women give suggestions. I gave suggestions in the past. A lot of powerful women inside United States, United Nations gave suggestions, great suggestions. But what did we accomplish? Nothing. Our situation get worse and worse, especially women in the war, women as refugees. You see, we are privileged. I'm privileged. To have the kind of life I have. My family came from the Middle East. I'm a refugee. My family from the Golan Heights. And this happened in 1925. So almost 100 years, and we continue, the same issues, and women and children suffering. So my understanding nowadays, if you don't have power in politics, if you don't empower the women, we have nothing to do. We're going to be slaves of the macho man, of our husbands or politicians. You see, in Brazil, we impeach a president woman, Dilma Rousseff, with no crime because they decided to take her because she was doing right. She's not giving privilege for corruption. They have nothing against her, but they end up impeach her. Now they just killed last year a woman in Brazil, Marielle. She was involved in politics, very powerful in Rio, and they killed. And who killed her? Now they're find out in TV, the president militia, they say, that's connected with the militaries, kill her. So the women get involved in politics. They have a little power, they'll kill her. And that's our problem. I think in Brazil, this is our problem. And myself, is not only domestic violence, also financial violence. My father passed away more than 20 years ago. My brother, a millionaire, owner of a bank, he cannot share my part. So it's still not solved. My mother passed away 5 years. I cannot have writings for nothing. And why he has the power? I'm in court against him. But why do I have the power? I don't have connections with the judges. And the problem also is the judiciary department. They have been bought to do what they want. If they receive money, they give freedom for this one. And look, our ex-president was in jail with no proof. Now they prove Lula. Now they prove that he's innocent. So we're living in a fake world with a lot of lies. How can we solve our problems? We don't have a direction. And I think if we women are not organized as soldiers, like the army are united, organized to fight a war. We are not. The problem, we became soldiers in this world, uniting all of the countries and have support financial. Probably they'll respect us. And what mother wants to have a baby and know that with 18, he's going to the war to kill or be killed. No mother wants to give birth to a child knowing that he's going to the war. And this is the problem nowadays. The big business is the weapon industry. take Netanyahu out of the game, and you see the war going to stop it, because it's the war against the Muslims. Again, Christians are quiet there, but the Muslims. And so they want peace? No, they don't want peace. US funded Israel more than $300 million a year just in weapons. So this is a big business. They want to finish with the war? No, they're making so much money in the weapon industry. So why are you going to finish? So that's why I'm proposing to have more meetings like that on Zoom, and get us together and form our army, each country. Let's be soldiers and let's talk and be very serious, because in politics, they don't respect. Even at United Nations, how many references do we have? What happened? What happened? Women is still worse than was 20 years ago. We have more women as refugees, starving. Even here in Rio, you see the people in the Zocodiv with a problem. We have the people living in favelas, the community. Most of the people you see in Rio is beautiful, but all the mountains are full of favelas, houses one on the top of each other, living 5, 6 people in the same house. How they are going to be separated? So there is no way we're going to pass this to see how many people. So Rio and São Paulo in Brazil are the worst cases. And that's it. I think we have to still to continue to be praying to God protect us, women and children. And let's try to organize in something. We have the United Nations as a building where we can do our meetings there. We have Zoom, we can do our meetings and start to be organized.
Thank
So
you.
that's my suggestion. Thank you very much.
Aggressive remarks, suggestions, and experiences you share that you work as a volunteer for United Nations. Thank you so much. Next, I'll go to Lily Thapa, founder president of Women for Human Rights Nepal. Lily Thapa.
Hello, good evening from Nepal, and namaste to everyone. Namaste, Sujata madam, and thank you GP Foundation and Somnathji and for having me here in this very important platform. Actually, I'm Lily, and I am engaged in an organization called Women for Human Rights. From last 25 years, we are just fighting for the rights of the widows and the single mothers in Nepal and in South Asia as well. So you all might be very much aware about the fact that how the widows are discriminated here in South Asia and in Nepal, because we have, a lot of discriminations among the women with husband and women with no husband. So it's too, it's too much, linked with the religion and the cultural here. We have a lot of do's and don'ts that the widows are forced to follow after the husband's death. You might be, I'm sure that many of you are aware of the fact that how the widows have to go through after the husband's death. And in Nepal case, actually, we have almost 6% of the widows among the women's populations. That means 900,000. And among the 900,000 widows, almost 67% of the widows are in between 20 to 35 years of age, having 3 to 4 children on average. And you can imagine, majority of them are illiterate. Almost 86% of the widows in our country are illiterate as per the census, last census. So you can imagine how difficult it is for a woman who is illiterate and who have no skills, no resources, and we have to, follow all these kind of inhuman practices. So you all can imagine how difficult the life for a woman without husband here in Nepal. And it's not only the situation of Nepal, it's all over in South Asia as well. So basically, I just wanted to share a little because we have very less time, because that majority of the women here in Nepal work in the informal sector. And almost 40% of the women are the daily wages here as per the data. And that we have almost conflict for last 12 years in our country. And that the conflict also have affected a huge impact on the life of the women here. Almost 200,000 women, men and men were displaced because of the conflict. Almost 10,000 people, women is turned into widowhood after the conflict, because of the conflict. And we have almost 200,000 people are displaced. So it's a really difficult time just because of the conflict. And people were actually going, overcome from the conflict. But that after that, we have a worst huge earthquake, which has affected a lot in the lives of the people here in Nepal. And now this pandemic of the COVID, you can imagine. And as I already told you, almost 40% people here, especially the women, they are all daily wagers. They work in the informal sector, and majority of them are the single woman, the female-headed household women who are hugely affected. And just because of the conflict, what the challenges that we are facing now, that we, the WHR from my organizations, we've been feeding almost 2,000 people every day, 2,000 daily wages every day from last 3 months from the first lockdown. Because it's really difficult for them to have a basic, fulfill their basic necessities. That is why we started that kind of a feeding of people, that with the aim of that no one leave hungry. And after that, our organization is now running a just one and only female quarantine, because I already told you, we are having a major challenges because almost more than 400,000 people, the migrant workers, they are coming back home. That Nepal is been totally dependent on the remittance, and Nepal is and how all these hundreds of thousands people are coming back with no clues that how they are going to survive. It's really, really difficult situations in Nepal right now. So and then where they are going to how they are going to survive, where they are going to earn money, what they are going to do in future is totally unknown. But right now we are having a major challenges on on giving a quarantine to the people. We don't have that a proper management by the government as well. So people who are coming directly from the other countries, various countries, they are sent to the home isolation without even having a proper, test. No PCR test has been done to anyone who is coming back home, and that really is really, challenges that it will increase more to the people, so it's difficult time for us, everyone here in Nepal. And besides that, because that now it's a lockdown, people all are in household home, and then even the children are in home, and the women, they are having they're in nowadays. We have done a lot of a quick survey among these women who are in the household right now, and because of this COVID, all the families are in home, so the women are increased a lot of work burden. In our society, just because of the patriarchal society, the men still not learn to share the household work with the women. So there's a huge work burden has been increased nowadays just because of the lockdown. And beside that, it's a really challenging data that we have been getting through from our hotline and from the National Women Commission. Within the 2 months of period, in the lockdown period, almost 1,700 GVV, gender-based violence cases have been reported. And another very dreadful, the data is that during this lockdown period, 1,200 people have committed suicide. And it's not because only of the lockdown, because of the COVID, but this could be one of the factor, that people have, the suicide rate has been increasing day by day. It's really, really, difficult time right now. And another situation is that, the GBV is highly increasing in our society, because even though there's a lot of shops has been closed, but we don't know where the people has been getting to have alcohol. So the alcohol violence is increasing day by day. And we still reported this issues to our police to have a patrolling during the night time. But that is really, really difficult because the alcohol violence is increasing day by day. And the GBV, gender-based violence, and the another the very surprising factor is coming right now is the marital rape is increasing in our society, like just because of the lockdown. And then unwanted pregnancy is also highly increased during this lockdown period. So these are all the things that we are facing right now, but we are, trying to overcome on our own, and we are supporting the government, providing the safe, all of the safe space running to use as in quarantine to the government, and we are supporting to the, the informal and the daily workers to have a kind of a basic services as per our capacity. So we are all doing like that. So I'll be happy to respond whenever if there's any more questions. Otherwise, I stop here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lily Thapa. She is the founder president of Women for Human Rights in Nepal. Thank you for your data sharing and your experiences, your knowledge in the forum. And I'd like to acknowledge here Sophia Sharma. She is attorney at law in New York. She just joined in. Next, I'd like to invite Victoria Piloti, the president of Center for the Women of New York. Victoria Piloti. Victoria Piloti, president of Center for the Women of New York.
You're muted, Victoria. You're muted.
Sorry, I will be sharing a PowerPoint presentation, and I will give you the website on the last slide. And I will be going through it quickly, so you will have it available afterwards. So Somnath, I'm going to share my screen now, okay?
Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
It says host disabled attendee screen sharing. You need to enable it.
Okay. Okay. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you to our global conference moderator, Somnath Gamire, coordinator North and South America, GP Koirala Foundation, and I'm Victoria Piloti, the president of the Center for the Women of New York, and in a short while I will introduce Malini Shah, our director. The Center for the Women of New York was founded in 1987 and has been empowering women with education and financial stability. Now, we have a new term, intimate partner violence, and we felt it was important to distinguish between this and domestic violence. According to Ron Wallace, PhD, Associate Professor of Criminal Justice at American Military, domestic violence historically was viewed as violence in a relationship focused on a crime of abuse involving two individuals in a heterosexual marriage. The husband was typically the abuser and the wife was the victim. In the 1970s, in response to a campaign by women's rights groups, and I'd like to commend Teresa, yes, they formed an army and they got results. So these women's rights groups highlighted the need to address abuse by husbands upon wives, and the US government and nonprofit agencies, our NGOs, started providing emergency shelters and other advocacy services for women who were survivors of domestic violence. In 1994, Congress passed the Violence Against Women Act, further strengthening laws by specifically identifying violence against women as a crime that needed more focused protection and, of course, more funding. So according to Dr. Wallace, what is intimate partner violence? Around the year 2000, the term intimate partner violence moved us away from the old view that abusive violence only occurs in marital relationships where the husband was the abuser and the wife was the victim. Intimate partner violence was introduced in order to encompass a broader understanding of violence in relationships, allowing the acknowledgement of abuse that can exist in any type of personal, intimate relationship, regardless of sexual orientation, marital status, or gender. And this distinction is important because if the law only states marital relationships, then there are loopholes for boyfriends and girlfriends, loopholes for unmarried couples. So it is important to distinguish this terminology in the laws we create across the globe. A government health organization also speaks to the various types of abuse. There's physical violence, sexual violence, emotional violence, economic abuse, and there's also stalking, where one partner follows the other, calls the other obsessively. And there are laws in the states to protect abuse, to protect victims of such abuse. Signs that someone is a victim of domestic violence: unexplained cuts or bruises, avoiding family and friends, making excuses for their partner's behavior, looking uncomfortable or fearful around their partner. The United States Department of Justice offers a victims helpline and makes sure that domestic violence is listed as a felony or a misdemeanor crime, and also connects with the National Domestic Violence Hotline through one of our NGOs. COVID measures contribute to people experiencing abuse. As many of our presenters have said, COVID has increased domestic violence, whether the statistics are there or not, whether the victims can make phone calls or get the word out or not, it has definitely increased abuse because of the isolation. Violence affects people in all stages of life, and many people who experience violence survive it but suffer from long-term physical, mental, and emotional health. The domestic violence, the COVID-19 measures necessary for slowing the spread may contribute to an increase in violence because of the social isolation, financial, emotional, or physical stress that has come out of COVID, lack of time alone or lack of physical and mental space. We all need space. Lack of childcare, so the children are around more often and may contribute to the violence in the home. Innocent children. Loss of job or income, depression or anxiety, and many of you have spoken about alcohol abuse. All types of substance abuse contribute to violence. They skew our behaviors, they change our behaviors. And so with that increase of substance abuse, by increased purchase of alcohol and other substances, there is reduced access to mental health or substance use services that would normally support these people who misuse substances. According to Professor Pinchevsky of University of Nevada, Las Vegas, even as lockdowns are being lifted, reopening plans are occurring, victims of domestic violence abuse may not be done suffering. A second wave could prompt lockdowns again and increase domestic violence. And she once again speaks to the formula. Domestic violence abuse is a simple mathematical formula. The recipe is you add economic strain, alcohol, frustrations, overall psychological distress, lack of opportunity for a victim to leave their home, and now you have more domestic violence. In Nevada, they have come up with a solution. The government has partnered with Uber and is offering assistance to survivors of domestic violence and sexual violence with shelters and free rides at local shelters throughout Nevada. domestic violence statistics remained relatively constant. There are those statistics out there that say that the domestic violence statistics are constant. We can only guess that there are so many unreported cases with all this forced togetherness with abusers. And we also may have new abusers who never were abusers. So they have no record of having abused before. So in southwestern, our state of Pennsylvania, the reported hotline calls increased, but shelter stays decreased during the quarantine in March and April. And in May, hotline calls and shelters stayed increased. We have a national domestic violence hotline, and the website is also structured in a way to keep our survivors safe and has warnings on it. And also most NGOs and most government offices that support domestic violence survivors have installed and instituted texting as an option. If someone is next to an abuser, they cannot pick up the phone. They cannot speak so readily, but they can text, and perhaps the abuser will not know what they're texting. So texting seems to be a viable option for our survivors, and our governments and our NGOs have started texting options. Domestic violence in New York. In October 2019, New York State instituted a partnership with providers of beauty services. They very much are confidants of our survivors, and they need training on how to deal with, how to support survivors. We need licensed social workers, we need clinicians, but a good second opportunity would be to train our beauty professionals to at least give survivors resources. They may not be trained in counseling, but New York State has implemented a plan to train them. And they provide a video to beauty workers. They have sent them all an email. And they have free resources on their website. Again, you will have this PowerPoint. You are all welcome to these free resources. The link is here. The New York State Office of the Prevention of Domestic Violence also has a hotline, also has texting options. And within the text option, they are very clear to tell the survivor, it is not a public chat room, it is completely confidential, it is secure and private, it is staffed by professionals who can help, and is available 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Our New York City Mayor's office has an office to end domestic violence and gender-based violence, and also has its own hotline, and lets survivors know that their shelters are open, that evictions are temporarily suspended, so they will not be displaced from their homes during this pandemic. And they have family justice centers, which are in the courts in every borough, which are a one-stop resource. They not only have the court system, they have counseling, they have legal services, they provide resources to shelters. So New York City has quite a few resources available and makes them very publicly known. Now, as far as our NGOs, we need to look to our hospitals. The Mount Sinai Sexual Assault and Violence Intervention Program out of Mount Sinai Hospitals gives advice to our intimate partner violence survivors. They have free, confidential, no documentation required for those who do not have legal immigration status. They have a telephone number. They have survivor-centered, trauma-informed counseling by licensed clinicians. They offer safety planning in the boroughs of Manhattan, Queens, and Brooklyn. And I do know that their advocates will be side by side in the courtroom, in the hospital with survivors. They are called and they are there to help the victims in those very early minutes of difficulty in the courts, in the police station, in the hospitals. Safe Horizon, which is a very large NGO in New York, has their own hotline, and you can speak with a licensed counselor. The counselor will give shelter referrals, safety planning, supportive counseling, help building lives, housing assistance, legal consultations, employment assistance, and worry about childcare. We do need to worry what happens when a survivor leaves the home. We need to worry about the children. And they offer 3 safety tips on their website. And now our New York Police Department. Again, this is how government makes a difference. The police department, knowing that texting is a viable option for our survivors, has the slogan, need help but can't speak. Well, then text to 911 and you will get help and be possibly taken out of a potentially dangerous situation. Gothamist reported that 19 domestic violence murders this year were 4 more than last year, and the numbers are still rising. This is as of April. Commissioner Dermot Shea of the police department was very troubled by this, and Assistant Commissioner for Family Justice Centers, again, they are linked with our court system and our social system, also said that social distancing doesn't need to mean emotional distance. Survivors need to reach out for help. Survivor safety plans are different. So they have developed a code word or phrase when survivors are afraid to call 911 and tell those that code word, and whoever they are texting or calling will then know to call 911 for the survivor. And again, love should never hurt. So the underreporting is a big issue. Our New York Police Department Deputy Chief Kathleen White is very concerned about the underreporting. If we don't know about the violence, and if we don't know that this is a repeat offender, we cannot take action and we cannot keep that survivor safe. We try and help those that have come to us, but we can only prevent what we know, not what we don't know. And the problem of translation around the globe, with global migration, we all have issues with translation in emergency situations, whether in our hospitals or in our police situations. Translation of domestic violence complaints is another issue. Back in 2014, Daisy Garcia and her 2 children, Danielle 3 and Yaslin 1, were stabbed to death by Garcia's husband after police were called to her home several times. Daisy's incident reports to the police were in Spanish and were not translated in a timely fashion. Daisy basically said in Spanish, "I fear for my life and my child's life, and he's going to kill us. I know he's going to kill us, and I need help." Deputy Chief White is remembering that incident many years ago, even though she is new in the position, and is making sure that reports are translated quickly and, of course, accurately. An inaccurate translation is no better than no translation. The New York Police Department domestic violence prevention officers, investigators, and supervisors assist victims in 77 precincts and 9 bureaus, housing bureaus citywide. And within the police department, there is a crime victim assistance program. CVAP is an initiative developed by the New York Police Department, staffed by an NGO, Safe Horizon, which places 2 Safe Horizon victim advocates in each of the 77 precincts and the 9 New York City housing developments. One advocate specializes in working with victims of domestic violence, and the other serves victims of other crimes. So the rationale for the program is that the sooner the NYPD provides a response that addresses many victims' needs and concerns, the more likely victims will feel safe, recover from trauma, and regain a sense of control in their lives. So this is yet another example of trauma-informed support. And now I would like to introduce Malini Shah, Director of the Center for the Women of New York. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. Yes, love should never hurt. Thank you, GPK Foundation, Somnathji, and Honorable Sujata Kudarala. Domestic violence worldwide, women are using code words at pharmacies to escape domestic violence during lockdown. A woman in France went to a pharmacy, one of the few public places still open after the lockdown, to prevent the spread of the virus, to tell the pharmacist that her partner had abused her. Soon after, the woman's spouse was arrested by the police. France, inspired by Spain, then launched a safety initiative in pharmacies for domestic violence survivors, where they could simply say the code word, mask 19. Lockdowns around the world bring rise in domestic violence. 90% of the causes of violence in this period are related to the COVID-19 epidemic. Brazil, we think there has been a rise of 40% or 50%. Italy calls the helplines had dropped sharply, but instead they were receiving desperate text messages and emails. Spain, the government has told women they will not be fined if they leave home to report abuse. UK has called for special police powers to evict perpetrators from their homes for the duration of the lockdown. Greece, officials say they were stepping up a campaign to help women deal with problems clearly emerging from the issue of confinement. 6 months of coronavirus lockdown could mean 31 million more cases of domestic violence, the UN says. Prediction of domestic violence rates for upcoming year. 6 months of lockdown to prevent COVID-19 spread could lead to 31 million more cases of domestic violence globally. Action is needed during the COVID-19 crisis, during lockdowns and after, to give support to victims and prevent violence. We cannot forget women and girls during the pandemic. Let's focus on them. A new COVID-19 crisis, domestic abuse rises worldwide. New term, intimate terrorism. I love it. Intimate terrorism, a term many experts prefer for domestic violence. Outside of physical violence, which may not always be present, there are also these tools of abuse: isolation from friendly, family, and employment, constant surveillance, strict and detailed rules for behavior, restrictions on access to basic necessities such as food, clothing, and sanitary facilities. Isolation shatters support networks. Twitter launches the dedicated search prompt to help victims of domestic violence in India. Twitter launched a search prompt that would redirect users that search keywords related to domestic violence to relevant information, resources that they could call, use if they are in trouble, by the Union Ministry of Women and Child Development and the National Commission for Women in India. The National Commissioner for Women witnessed a twofold increase in the number of domestic violence complaints during the period of lockdown. I do think this is something that we need to continue and speak more about, and everybody coming together. And I do encourage everyone to join us at CWNY, check out our upcoming events, our current services. We do book clubs, legal clinic, computer classes. Women, we educate women, caregiver phone support groups, English as a second language, refer services, and educational webinars on women issues. And it would be a pleasure. You can download this PowerPoint presentation at http://cwny.org/events. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, President of Center for the Women of New York, Victoria Piloty, and the Director, Malini Shah, for your outstanding job presentation on these issues of domestic violence. And we hope we can learn a lot from this presentation. Let us keep in touch. Let us work together to make the future better in our community in any issues, especially now during this COVID and post-COVID-19 that we are facing a lot of issues on domestic violences. Thanks again, Center for the Women of the New York and GPK Foundation America would like to partner with you in future action of this
Can I
domestic.
say something?
Thanks again. Next, without any delay, I would like to invite Ms. Jihai Fisher, Human Rights Activist and Executive Director of Korean American Family Service Center. Jihai Fisher.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jihai Fisher. I'm the Executive Director at the Korean American Family Service Center, located in Flushing, New York. Thank you, Somnath and the GP Foundation for this very important conference. I really am honored to be part of this really important conversation. At the KFSC, over 30 years, we've been providing social services to survivors, immigrant survivors, primarily Korean, Asian, American survivors who are affected by domestic violence, sexual assault, and child abuse. As many of the colleagues in this conference shared, KFSC, we witnessed many of the challenges during this COVID-19 that our survivors are facing. These survivors are already challenged and marginalized in the best time, and the COVID-19 really contributed additional challenges for our survivors and their children. I'm not gonna repeat the same challenges that a lot of our colleagues already shared, but because our survivors are trapped with the abusers, for the lack of or better word, we've seen some trends during this COVID-19. First of all, we have 24-hour hotline. It's in bilingual, and it's increased 300% during the month of April. And from April to May, our cases, 600 cases, there's on 600 cases increase between April and May. So as you can imagine, these survivors are trapped with the abusers. And the two trends that we've seen is the fact that the abuser is now targeting the children, because a lot of, all the New York City, the public schools are shifted to the online learning. So all the children are also trapped in the home, and it's very clustered. And the abusers are now targeting the children. So we've seen the increase in the child abuse cases. Some are very severe, including sexual abuse, physical abuse. So it's very daunting during this time. The other trend that we've seen is the fact that a lot of the New Yorkers and a lot of the Americans have lost their employment, their jobs. Therefore, older children are moving in with the elder parents. And we could guess what the roots are, but increased in the stress compounded with the financial downturn. The older children are abusing the elder parents. We've seen other forms of domestic violence, and the numbers have increased. So, as we all share, it's a very difficult time for the survivors and their children, and their family members. And I think it's really important for the domestic violence providers or the activists to come together and really voice ourselves to the local, state, federal governments to make sure that that these survivors, especially the immigrant survivors, voices are included in the conversation. As well as we want to make sure that the survivors or the victims who are in need of help, the immediate help, understand that there is a help out there, like the KFSC in New York and other wonderful NGOs They're doing wonderful work globally. So what within KFSC, what we have done is to partner with the local media, video, TV, the newspaper, to make sure that our hotline number is disseminated, and that the survivors are able to call in whenever they can. And I think, as Victoria mentioned, we've been very creative in making sure that the survivors are able to reach out for help, like developing code work, making sure that the safety planning is developed for each survivor that come to our door. Yeah, so thank you for having me, and I look forward to further this discussion.
Thank you so much, Jihai Fisher, for your suggestions, sharing your experiences on this very hot issue, sensitive issues, domestic violence during and post COVID-19. And we look forward to working with you. Next, I would like to invite our women leader, Jana Henriquez. Jana Henriquez, our women leader, for your remarks on this domestic violence that we are facing during and post COVID-19. Jana Henriquez. Just unmute your microphone. Please unmute your microphone, Jana. Unmute it, unmute. Yes, go ahead. Now you on. Yes, Jana. Hello. Something wrong with your connection? Yes. Jana Henriquez. Cannot hear you. So just check your microphone and we'll come back to you without any delay. I'd love to invite Dibya Chaturvedi from Saheli's Co-Executive Director.
Thank you, Somnathji, and thank you, GP Foundation, for inviting me at today's panel. It's been wonderful to hear everyone and learn about how COVID has impacted, domestic violence survivors in different countries and the steps that you all are taking to address it. Just want to quickly introduce Saheli. My name is Dibya Chaturvedi. I'm a co-ED at Saheli. So Saheli Support and Friendship for Women is a non-profit organization that provides domestic violence services to primarily South Asian women and families and children in Massachusetts and New England area. Saheli started in 1996, so we have been providing these services for the last 24 years. Many women here have raised the issue of what is domestic violence and how vulnerable South Asian women are to domestic violence when they come here to the US. And we talked about isolation and how that makes them so much more vulnerable to domestic abuse, limited language abilities, financial and immigration dependency. And all of those issues make them, make them isolated, make them prone to domestic violence because the harmful cultural practices and the patriarchal culture, beliefs are still practiced here. What we have seen with COVID is that isolation, that lack of knowledge of resources, was compounded because they had to now stay at home with their abuser. They didn't know who to call because, like domestic violence is about power and control. And many abusers use that opportunity to limit access to technology or phones to survivors. And even when they had access, they had no safe place to call, you know, the helplines or shelter or Saheli for any help. So we saw a decline in calls to our helpline. We have a 24-hour helpline. We did see a decline calls in March. But then what happened, because the violence has been escalating and increasing, you know, everyone is home and even extended family is home. So the violence increased. And then what happened was there were multiple calls to police, you know, 911 calls, because there was a fight and violence happening in the neighbor's house. And then what we started seeing was an increase in referrals from police, where police departments would call us that, you know, this case has come to us and, you know, the survivor speaks limited English. Can you help us with language help or with cultural help? And we saw an increase from police departments referrals. And we also saw an increase from Department of Children and Families, where children were reporting abuse or you know, neighbors were reporting abuse, and DCF in Massachusetts was involved, and they were calling us to help them with the survivors. So while we saw a decline in our helpline calls initially, we are seeing quite a marked increase in police department and DCF referrals, and even community members who are now who are coming and letting us know that, you know, such and such thing is happening and can Saheli help. Many people who have spoken before, you know, women, these are South Asian women in Massachusetts who have no other resource. They are isolated. They don't know where to turn to. Many of them are undocumented, have no recourse to public benefits, or many of them who are separated and alone, living with their children, have faced transportation barriers, did not have transportation to even go to grocery stores to get food. So what Saheli did was, as a South Asian Domestic Violence Service Agency, we swung into action. We partnered with local community organizations in providing food to our survivors. We helped our survivors fill up forms for if they were eligible for unemployment, made sure that their forms were completed. If they needed language help, we made sure that we found financial resources to pay for immediate rent and food. We raised funds with foundations in Massachusetts, with Department of Public Health, to offer immediate financial emergency assistance to these survivors. So we helped, we helped as much as we could for these women. And like I said before, and I keep saying that, is for so many of them, really they have no one to go to. And this is what Jahai said and Tenzing said, that these women are alone and isolated. And Saheli, which means friend in Hindi and Urdu, we become their support. We are the family that they can turn to. And that is what we see, that these are the women are turning to us, and we offer them a wide variety of services. So from the get-go, we are doing a trauma-informed safety planning with them. We need to assess whether they are safe. We offer them legal services. We go to the court with them because they have never experienced court before. They don't know what the criminal justice system is here, right? They don't know the resources, and they're overwhelmed and they feel alone and helpless. And so we help them with court accompaniment. We'll go to the courts with them. We find housing for them. When COVID hit, the shelters were shut down because, and it was so difficult for some of our survivors to find housing. And we immediately, collaborated with other agencies, even with hotels and motels, to put them in a safe place where they would have a safe roof over their heads and their children would be safe. We offer free mental health counseling to survivors who come through Saheli's door. We offer immediate financial assistance and cash assistance. And we offer all public benefits advocacy. We offer language help, we offer cultural help. We'll go with them to the housing departments, we'll go with them to the welfare to get the DTA cards, we'll go with them to the courts, we'll go, any and everywhere that they need services, we will provide it. So we offer free and confidential services, and I say confidential with utmost seriousness because we take confidentiality very seriously. The South Asian community is small, and we encourage women to come to us and create a safe place for them to share what they're going through abuse, and we become a partner in helping, in empowering them. Just quickly, I want to add that our approach is three-pronged. We in today's discussion, it was so interesting. We were addressing the immediate needs of abuse. Many people raise that, what happens when there's domestic abuse and it's compounded by something like COVID and being locked down with the abusers. There was conversation about empowerment. How do we get out of this cycle for good? And how do we prevent it? And I want to add that what Saheli, we have a three-pronged approach. So we do immediate domestic violence intervention services. So that comes with doing immediate safety planning, assessing what resources are needed, and helping a survivor get those immediate help, right? If it's housing, if it's legal. And then our second approach is empowerment. So now that we have helped you, let's say, get into housing, and we have helped you be safe, what next? How do we empower you to get back on your feet so you can take care of yourself and of your children and your family? And we have varied programs where we offer computer literacy, English classes. We give them driving license, help them financially to get their driving license, to get their, ID cards, help them, through educational certifications, which will enable them to get jobs. And while we are doing that, what we also want to do, invest is in our prevention work. We don't want women to experience this. We said, no one deserves abuse. You're not born to, experience abuse. So we work on prevention, where we have, parenting classes, where we have, healthy relationship workshops with the community, with both men and women. We want to include men in the conversation. And we do prevention workshops to try and get the community to start thinking about what is healthy relationships, what are some of the harmful cultural practices that are still being practiced in the US, and how do we, get rid of those? So we use this three-pronged approach in our work. We have been doing that for the past 24 years. So, with COVID, it has become even more apparent. Someone raised the point that COVID exposed the existing inequalities in the system. There are already structural inequalities. There are already inequalities built in the system that make sure that a woman is in second place, is not empowered and cannot have her own say. So those things become really important in our work as a social justice organization, as a premier agency offering domestic violence services in Massachusetts. That work becomes really important. And so with COVID, we have really, we have the, and other people have talked about the creative ways they have used to reach out to women or to offer services so that you can help, women who are in a bad place. So with that, just want to end that it's been wonderful to know all of you and to hear all of you. And the only way moving forward is when we all collaborate, when we come together and we work with each other so that we can offer, different strengths and support to the women who need help. So a woman in Nepal needs as much help as a Nepali woman in the US, right? A woman as Indian woman in India needs as much help as an Indian woman right now in Massachusetts. So we all need to come together, offer our services and our strengths, and collaborate and help these women, because they sure need all the help that they can get. And I'm really honored to be on this panel and to hear all the wonderful work that you all are doing. And I would invite you to meet with us at Saheli, to call on us and collaborate and help these women as much as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Dibya Chatterjee, for sharing your experiences, your knowledges. And in solving the domestic violence issues, we are all together. Me too, we too, everyone too, all over global too, So without unity, and there is no strength to solve any issues, and any solutions will never come out. So thanks again, Saheli, Coach Executive Director Dibya Chatterjee. Next, I would like to invite Yana Henriquez, a woman leader and from Latino community. Yana Henriquez.
Hi, everybody. Now everybody hear me?
Yes.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jana Enriquez. Thank you for inviting me today. I'm very pleasure to stay here. I'm like it here. Everybody working in union and together, because in this time for COVID and pandemic, everybody is very sad. Everybody is very feel not have a helping. But let me tell you something. My name is Jana. I'm working in the community in Queens, New York for almost 21 years. And everything you need and help you, I'm here. So, man, thank you for inviting me. You know me for a long time right now. And
Yes, yes.
I have it open for help you and find more resources and help you the woman for, because the issues the woman and violence is in all community, in the Hispanic community, in the Asian community. And I think in this time, everybody working more resources for putting in these issues. Thank you for inviting me today.
Thank you, Yana, so much for your support to our community. Especially we are minorities in minority community, South Asian, Asian, Hispanic community. So we all need to work together unitedly. That makes possible for any issues that we face in our communities: domestic violence, human trafficking, and immigrants issues, like DACA and ICE raids. Those we have been working together with Yana and Rodriguez. So we just salute you for your dedication to the community. And we continue to work together, build a coalition together, and contribute whatever we can from each of us to make this global community better in the days to come. Next, and the final panelist of today is founding attorney Sophia Sarma. Founding attorney Sophia Sarma and Associates, which based the law firm based in New York City. Please welcome attorney Sophia Sarma.
Thank you so much, Somnathji. Thank you for organizing this event. Thank you, Malini Shah. Thank you, Victoria, Center of Women of New York, GP Koirala Foundation. This is a wonderful effort, especially in this time when all of us need to come together, and especially women. We need to be here, support each other, empower each other, encourage each other, and be there in whichever way we can to support each other. So, first thing first, I'm the attorney. I'm an attorney in the city of New York. I have my own law firm, Sophia Sharma and Associates. I have also, on the side, I also work with a lot of NGOs wherein I can help and support the cause for domestic violence, women empowerment, and various issues like these. So I would just like to use this opportunity to let all of you know, I would be like looking for pro bono cases, like one case per like 2-3 months to help our society and community. Right now, it's still the beginning, so I wouldn't be able to take a lot of cases, but definitely going forward, I would like to help and coordinate with various NGOs out there and help the women, because whenever someone comes from any country, like especially South Asian countries, they go through a lot of domestic violence issues. And that is sometimes taken advantage by the spouse because he feels that he's a citizen or a green card holder, and he can particularly take advantage of the situation. A person who's coming from like outside wouldn't be much aware of the benefits of the support that the person can get here. So we have to help these women. There are various like immigration benefits as well. We also need to make sure that we educate women by telling them what are their rights and also what are the few things that they need to be smart about. If it's especially in a situation where the person came here as an immigrant and the spouse is the abuser is a citizen or a green card holder, please make sure that you start collecting like some proof of their citizenship or their green card, and whatever you can like take proof of the abuse or the good faith, because these proofs can later on help you in proving your case and establishing your case. At the beginning you don't think much about it because you are still trying to work the relationship and see if you can make things work, but definitely like later on when things get worse, then you wouldn't get a chance to collect all these things. I have a lot of clients who come to me and they want to take advantage of this immigration benefits that they have, but they cannot because they don't even have their marriage certificate. They don't have the birth certificate. They don't have because the abuser will also try to make sure that they don't provide the documents to the to the the victim. So we have to make sure that we educate them about this. Like the moment you realize that things might get worse, start trying to protect yourself. So these are the few things that I just wanted to mention here. Definitely, anyone like who needs help in any way, if I can help you, I will be putting out my details here on the chat. So reach out to me. Would definitely like to coordinate and collaborate with other NGOs to help this cause. Thank you so much once again for organizing this event. Have a great day.
Thank you, Sophia. Then last panelist for your short and sweet and effective measures and suggestions you provided to us legally in terms of legal. And thanks again. We look forward working all of you together, like I said, to make our communities better, secure for the generations to come. And now we are entering in the Q&A session. First question goes to Lily Thapa from Nepal. A question by N. Rana. She's asking that you mentioned women quarantine in Nepal. How secure and safe at this time of COVID-19? What has the government done to support? This is, like you said, NGO project. So how safe is this women-based, only women quarantine in the places that you mentioned?
Thank you for the question. Actually, we don't have, the government doesn't have a separate female quarantine as such. But we actually, some of the women-led organizations initiated to have a female quarantine, because you know that almost 200,000 female migrant workers are returning back. Just last week, we have 250 pregnant women from Dubai. You must have heard that news, of, because it has been all over the world. They are now next week also more than 1,500 female migrant workers, they are coming back. But we don't have a special female quarantine not in Nepal. But some of the organizations have opened that only female quarantine. Basically because we have heard a lot of cases in the quarantine outside in Kathmandu, in the districts, in the villages, where they've been raped, they've been sexually harassed, and most of the quarantine is not safe and secure for the women. That's why now you know that I'm been engaged in a high-level monitoring committee from the National Human Rights Commissions, and we've been continuously monitoring the quarantine, and especially focused on with the gender perspectives, and where we've been giving a lot of suggestions to the government to have a female quarantine. That is why government just initiated few in some villages in some parts of our country, but there is no such female quarantine. But we have, in my organizations, we've been running a quarantine in 21 districts where we have more than 700 female. They've been get the services from our quarantine. Basically, what the female migrant workers, they expect when they come back to home, they wanted to have a PCR test, which has not been able to do so far. Because the government said that we don't need to do the PCR test, and they've been sent out directly to the villages where they again have to be on a quarantine in their own villages before entering to the house, to their own home. So that's the kind of a process. It's not been properly managed by the government as well. So we've been continuously giving suggestion and the advocacy, doing a lot of advocacy in this regard. We really need a female quarantine, because the quarantine is not a safe place for the women and the young women, especially the girls. And we are finding a lot of the female exploitations in quarantine. And recently, just 2 days before, there was attempted rape in the quarantine, and 2 rape cases by the security personnel as well, who is giving services in the quarantine in some in one village in Nepal. So that is why we really need a separate quarantine for the female. That is why we've been doing a lot of advocacy. And in my organizations, right now we have 49 female migrant workers who just arrived last night from UAE. And you know that these all female migrant workers, they are not been there in foreign countries, by their own choice. They are forced to go and earn some money just because of the survival, And mostly majority of the women who is now returned from foreign countries, they are all young. They are all young, below 40 years of age, and they are all semi-literate. They're not literate enough. And what we heard from them, because we did a quick survey once they arrived in our organization, in our quarantine, what we heard, they were in the transit in UAE or in Dubai from last 40 days with no money. They are forced to leave their job, so they don't have a money in their hand. From last 40 days, they were in a transit in their country. And again, they came here and they have to be in a holding center for a few days here in Kathmandu. Once immediately after they arrive here in Kathmandu, then again they are sent to their village where they have to be another 14 days. Can you imagine? It takes almost 2-3 months to reach to their home. So it's really, we really very surprising, with the system of the government, and we are continuously doing a lot of advocacy to have a proper management in the quarantine and give the special attention to the female return migrant as well. And I'm continuously doing a lot of monitoring and giving suggestion to the policymakers as well, from as a part of the NHRC, National Human Rights Commission's monitoring team.
Thank you, Lily Thapa, for answering that questions. I hope the questioner got the kind of idea, and hopefully the female quarantine that you are doing under your leadership will be secure and in safe mode. Thanks again. Next question goes to.
Just wanted to add one thing, Somnathji, because we know that many of our country having a lot of our female migrant returnees, So basically in India, in Pakistan, and Bangladesh, in Nepal, in South Asia, we'll have more migrant returnees coming to our country. And you know that in many of our countries, especially Nepal, is totally based on the remittance. You know that Nepal is totally not only based in remittance, we are based in tourism and we are based in microeconomic. And all these three areas has been highly affected by this COVID, and there will be no remittance as such, and there will be tourism is highly affected. And these microeconomic businesses, which basically the women were engaged, they are not been, now allowed to do any job because we all are in lockdown. So it's all three parts has been highly affected, and we can imagine how the economic sustainability of our country. That is why we've been keep trying how we can keep these migrant workers to be in their home, to be in their country with some kind of economical opportunity. That is what we are also thinking about that and having a lot of discussions with the policymakers in this regard.
Thank you. Thanks again. So next, another question for the president of CWNY, Center of Women of New York, Victoria Pelotti. Please unmute. What would be your most effective suggestions to combat, control, and prevent this domestic violence globally?
I have a very simple solution. We need to teach our children to respect each other. And we need to teach them that when they harm someone else, they harm their own mother, they harm their own sister. We need to really reach them on a basic emotional level. And we need to start young. We need to start in the elementary schools, but we need to start with the families. We need to have some sort of training for parents when they take their baby home from the hospital, I think.
Thank you. Thank you so much, President Victoria Piloti, and with all your efforts, your suggestions, and the experience you shared with us had been possible to make this forum, global forum, happen, and really great presentation that you share among us, and it is really knowledge to gain. And thanks again. If any of our panelists or our participants here have any questions, those were the questions that I received from our Facebook Live that has been already addressed. Now, if any one of our panelists want to ask anyone, please feel free. We have 5 more minutes left. And after that, we will close this forum. I welcome.
Can I say something?
Yes, go ahead. Ask
Can
the
I?
question to, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. I wanted to say something. I had written when this COVID started, I had written that this quarantine brings forth the character of a person, the education, upbringing, culture, environment, mindset. It talks about the parents and the family of a person. It has brought forth the character of a person, these 3 months or 2 months. I have a deep feeling that now we have talked on a world level from Africa, Brazil, India, the America, which we consider as the most developed nation of the world. Still same things are going there which are happening in India, in South Asia, or a remote area in Africa or Asia. So that brings that we have to cater to the root problem, the roots of this problem. That means that all of us are very wrong the way we bring up our children, especially the boys. Yes. So this means that we have to concentrate how we are bringing up our family, that all parents, at least most of them are going wrong in bringing up their boys or their girls. That means parents need to be educated before giving birth to a child. They need to be tutored. That is why today we are here at a forum, and so many organizations are working on domestic violence. Why? Because the children are not brought up properly. They are not educated. They are not in the right environment. I think the organizations, the government, the police, they need to focus on this basic question. So there's a need of a cultural revolution.
Yes.
Instead of making a women army, we need to work on cultural revolution, how to bring up our children. There needs to be a course correction in our education system. That means the schools, the colleges, the teachers, the professors, our leaders, they need to talk about a cultural revolution, and that too worldwide, not only in one particular country, India or Nepal. At least we should be thankful to COVID or the quarantine, which has brought forth this problem, the magnanimity of this problem of domestic violence, which is not only physical, but mental, how women need to be respected, how they are to be dealt, a sister, a mother, or a daughter, how everybody needs to behave with her, how she needs to be respected. I think we should go to the root cause of the problem. How it needs to be watered, what soil, which soil, and the fertilizer we need to give. We are trying to do the correction at the time of flowering or cutting the branches or the leaves. I think we need to go to the basic, the watering and soiling. We need to go to that.
Thank you so much for your valuable advices. Like I said,
so just one more.
Until and unless I don't change, you cannot make change. So you have to change yourself first. to face the educational improvement in this 21st century. So we all need to have educated well to educate others. Then only the society can change. Then only we can address the issues. Then only we can make better, like I've been saying. Next, who has been asking to ask questions?
Kavita, it's Mabuba.
Yes, Kavita, go ahead. So we have 3 minutes left.
Yeah, just very quick one, a very quick suggestion that we all are talking on the same platform, same issue, same thing. This is the socialization process. Can we work on abolishing the patriarchy where both men and women both are on the comfort zone, both men and women? So can we take initiative to abolish this patriarchy and work accordingly through the school system, through the childbirth, through their socialization process, how we can put together all these things in our training module, curriculum, and our education system. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. This only will happen once we all get knowledge and we all educate, and the knowledge we share to other must be equal, So we should not do.
But that patriarchy is a biased gender, division of labor, gender, bringing resources to the family, and biased respecting to each other, right? That our socialization process teach us or taught us. So if we can address this patriarchy, to root out this patriarchy, that could help us to minimize compromise. It's not compromise, to see the balanced relationship. It's not equity. It's just to respect each other, have the equal relationship to each other, not only husband and wife, but also all partners, with the parents, with the children, with the siblings, with the neighbors, with the community, and in everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you. Like Victoria said, we have to educate our children first.
That's correct.
Yeah,
That's correct. Yeah.
Thank you. So I would like to acknowledge some of the participants here. Bina Kol Katsu, Maya Serpa, Sophia Kerisha, Dibya Chandra, Mikael Linke, Vidurman Singh Basnet, and rest are our panelists that we have circulated in our flyer already. And with that, last remarks, if Teresa can share a minute of last remarks from Brazil.
I'm very happy to be part of this group. We are uniting all world, and it's in the end, you see, it's education.
Yes.
It's just one word. Yes. Educate our children. We are the mothers. We educate our boys. So you must start since they're babies, to respect women. And by educating our children, we educate our husbands.
That's right.
And I think the word is education, and the solutions are in the mothers, are in the women. And that's it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the main weapon is education. Yes.
I think it's education.
Yeah. Yes,
that's
yes,
it.
Yes. Thank you so much, everyone who joined this panel today. And we look forward to hosting another panel on human trafficking. And we will keep posting you, and we'll update you. Please follow Facebook page, GPK Foundation. We have been doing the global conferences, leadership conferences virtually, and this is our 6th series. So we host every weekend one event every weekend, and we will post you the upcoming events, like I said, in human trafficking. So, and on behalf of GPK Foundation chairperson and former Deputy Prime Minister and former Foreign Minister of Nepal, Sujata Koirala, I would like to thank you all from the bottom of my heart bottom of our foundation, and she has to leave early today as she is kind of sick, got fever, she mentioned earlier. So, and we could not listen to her word of thanks or remarks at the end. And on behalf of her and on behalf of our entire foundation, like you all know, the GPK Foundation has 18 branches all over the world: Europe, Asia, Australia, Africa, and in America right here. And I am the president of the GPK Foundation America. And we love and we extend our hands together to work with you all for the better future of our generations to come. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And stay safe, stay healthy, and
Same
let's,
to you. Yeah.
let's face the issues
Thank you.
and get up with the solutions with all your ideas and experiences, how we can make it better ahead. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lily Thabaji from Nepal, for your valuable presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Nice to see everybody.
Thank you,
Nice to see
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia.
Good to listen to
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you, Teresa.
Somebody has asked me to join.
Thank you.
I'm sorry,
Yes.
but it was really nice.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you
Bye,
for
everybody.
joining.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
It was a learning experience. We
Yes.
learned a lot
Very
from
nice
each other.
topic. Very good
Yes.
topic.
It was very interesting.
Yes,
Everybody
especially the
spoke very well.
education one with the younger ones, and of course the education it should be starting from home, because it says parents are the first teachers. Like, before they go to school, the kids learn from home. So once they start going to the school, if the parents really cooperate with the teachers and work on the same basis, so we have to be on the same, the children has to be on the same page, what teachers say at school and the parents say at home. Because if the adults say two different things, then we put the confusion in children's mind. That's how I think it, because I'm an early childhood teacher, I'm Montessori certified, I work in Brooklyn, and I'm from Queens, New York. So it is a yes, like, and every children, they are different, they learn differently, they have different emotions. So we cannot make a fixed one kind of rule for everybody, because it has to be different, because we have different emotions as a human being. There should be a general guidance of the rules the children needs to follow, but some children needs more time to work on that. And some just grabs it quickly, like just like, if you ask them to do it. But when we ask them to do something, instead of being a dictator and telling them what to do, we just ask them, oh, can you do that? Would you do that? Like, instead of indirect way of saying, and then making them as a friend, instead, oh, I'm an adult, you have to listen what I'm saying, or I'm a teacher, you have to do that, or what I'm saying, or I'm a mom, you have to do what I'm saying. Instead of that, just be like, just try to understand the emotion, and maybe we can, hopefully one day we can, just because we have to put a very good seed in the young children to make a future generation good. Yes, I agree with you guys. So that hopefully domestic violence is gonna, hopefully it's gonna go minimized. I have experienced that a little in my own life. So yes, like we grew up in a patriotic kind of family. We do respect our male figure, but in the same time, when they just cross the boundaries, and then it's gonna be issues. And because I'm a divorcee, I'm separate from my husband, because all those issues could not be taken care of well at the moment. So
And I've been a teacher also, and in one women's conference I said, remember your kids watch you.
Yes, right.
And they copy everything that you do.
Right. That is very true. It's like they are not kind of listening, or they're not paying attention, but every move you do, or
You
every
do,
word
yes.
you use, they do that, because
Yes, it's very interesting. Yes.
Yes, it is, because when the parents tell us, oh, like, we don't use that kind of thing, but
Yeah.
he or she's using it at home, like, so
Yes.
I just say, oh, my sweetheart. I use the word sweetheart a lot to the children, because they're young, like,
Yeah.
and one child, she is just 5 or 6. oh, like, I'm not your sweetheart, I'm Talpa. She was telling her name because she was used to of calling by her name, like, you know, other children, they feel very like kind of loving and caring. They feel good when I say, oh, sweetheart, can you do that one? Like, you know, bring that one kind of last activity. But one child, she wants to be called by her name instead of saying the sweetheart. So that's her choice. So we have to like, you know, respect her choice. And then I just, that kind of. So they just, and the other children, they just use some of the words which I use in the class and at home. Like, you know, it's amazing. They do what. So it was so wonderful.
Yes.
In the background, I was listening. I was doing my work, but I was listening to you guys.
Yeah, very good.
That's great.
Thank you, Maya Serpa.
Thank you for joining.
It was nice. Thank you.
Have a good day. Have a good day.
Okay, so
Yes, we've learned so much. Thank you.
as a panel next in human trafficking.
Yes, I'm looking forward to that. That will be very interesting.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
When is that planning, Somna?
Thank
Next
When are you?
weekend.
Next
Thank
weekend.
you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye. Take care.
We'll be there.
Waiting for a
Bye.
interesting session
Yes.
ahead again.
Next
And then,
Saturday?
Most probably, yeah.
Okay.
I'll update you tomorrow or
Okay.
Tuesday.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Foundation, for
Keep,
keeping this
checking,
question.
keep on checking our
Thank you.
Facebook page.
Okay.
PK Foundation.
Yes,
All
we
the
will
updates
do
are
that.
there, all the
We'll
live
tell
programs are there, all the recorded are there. So please keep on your eyes over there. And if you could share all those programs that we have been doing so far. This is our 6th series. Again, thanks again. Thank you all.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Malini. Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Thank you so
much.
much. Thank you.
Kusumji, bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Sophia, for joining. Thank you, Somnathji. So nice.
Thank you.
of you.
Yeah,
Bye.
it was lovely,
Bye.
lovely.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.